Let's unbox the Black Series 6-inch figure of the KX security droid from Jedi Survivor. Varykino. If it's Star Wars, we collect it. Hello there, thanks for visiting Varykino. This past week we had a fantastic new game update to one of my favourite Star Wars games, Star Wars The Old Republic, so we've been playing a lot of that this week, and it's put me in the mood to continue my Star Wars game celebration by opening up some gaming greats figures from Hasbro, from both the Vintage Collection 3.75-inch line and the Black Series 6-inch line, and this one I just picked up this week on clearance. This is the KX security droid from Star Wars Jedi Survivor in the Black Series line. You can see this is a slightly older figure when we still had the plastic-free packaging boxes with no windows, but nevertheless I'm so excited to add this one to my collection, and I can't wait to open it up and actually get a full view of the figure inside. It's going to be a lot of fun. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. Coming up really soon, of course, I'm going to open this figure up. We'll take a look at all of the details and the accessories, but first let's take a quick look at the packaging. This gaming greats figure of the KX security droid was released during the thankfully short-lived plastic-free packaging era, which Hasbro dabbled in, trying to reduce the amount of plastic used in their Star Wars figure packaging. So instead of a clear window at the front, we have a glossy image of the figure posed here on the front, which is kind of cool. But of course, as a collector, I do like to see my figures pictured there in the packaging instead, so I can see particular flaws. And for those who like to keep their figures in their packaging, you completely lose the effect just not being able to see the figure. We have the Star Wars Black Series logo here at the top, and because of course this is a gaming greats figure, we have a black and a silver shiny gloss sticker there on the front reading gaming greats. Now for the gaming greats line, we have a teal accent color, so we have that color stripe across the front for the game series Star Wars Jedi Survivor, and also used for the character name KX security droid. We can see that plastic free packaging note there on the front alongside with the age, the warning logo, and of course the Hasbro logo there. And that same teal accent color is used for the character side art here. This one is a little bit on the darker side because of course the KX droids are quite dark in color, but we still have that really nice accent color coming here at the bottom, where we also have the character name here in black font at the bottom, KX security droid. I quite like the pose. The character's very tall because of course KX droids are very tall. We've got the electro staff weapon posed here with a little bit of a scene just in the corner there at the back. Moving on to the back of the box, we've got that same teal accent stripe here showing that this is number 15 from the gaming greats line, of course noted here again Star Wars Jedi Survivor, and we have that same promotional image from the front pictured here on the back, this time just a little bit cut off here at the side. Now we do have a little bit of a blurb about the KX security droids here on the back. Formidable and specialized in close combat, these droids employ a combination of brute strength and rugged durability to capture and incapacitate enemies. So quite a nice little bio there introducing the particular KX specialty security droid there as well. Now moving on to the side, this is quite unique of course from that plastic-free packaging era. We can see that note there again in a few different languages. So we have here, instead of that side window that would wrap around on the left side on the standardized packaging, we have an image here of the action figure as pictured on the inside. We have it posed in a nice straight position there with the accessory pictured next to it, and we have the height mentioned here, 7.1 inches or 18 centimeters. We also have the gaming greats logo in a gloss finish there at the side. Now I just wanted to quickly bring in another box. I actually have on hand number 14 from the gaming greats line, which surprisingly was also from Jedi Survivor. So you can see these are sequential numbers, 14 then 15 from the gaming greats line, but as you can see, I have opened this one earlier. This one was actually a plastic windowed one, so between the release of these two gaming greats figures was when that changeover in packaging style happened. But of course, if you are lining your figures up with that cool side art, these two actually match perfectly. You can see that shield from the riot trooper there matching up to the picture there on the KX droid. So if you like to line them up on the side, you won't really notice too much the difference, though of course the major difference when you're lining them up from the side is the plastic windowed boxes did have the plastic hanger, whereas the plastic free packaging one has the larger cardboard hanger. So if you line them up, you do see that as a little bit of a notice, but generally speaking, I think the side art looks really cool. So of course this one you could see the figure inside, this one I can't, so I think it's definitely time to open them up. So like usual, I'm going to cut the tape here on the bottom of the box. I just find it's a little bit nicer just to hide that opening on the underside. It's always quite fun, a little bit of a mixed bag, opening up these plastic-free packaging, or sort of the blind boxes, because sometimes they're packaged in rather interesting ways. So removing the cardboard tray inside, I can see the legs sticking out from the Gaming Greats branded tissue paper, and we also have what looks like the backpack accessory packaged separately here in the side in a paper envelope. I'm just going to get that one out. So this one looks like this is going to be quite a trick to get out. We've got a little bit of a cardboard band here, so I'm just going to go ahead and snip through that. So hopefully that will let me free this figure out of the packaging. It's kind of fun. Now, I like the way that figures are posed in the plastic windows. You can generally see them when they're in these plastic-free packaging boxes. They tend to be a little bit askew because they're not having to be posed nicely to fit into a tray. So let's see how he is posed. So yes, his legs are very wide. So hopefully those will adjust in a little bit. Of course, he's not too bad. Sometimes, you know, you sort of hold your breath in case something is broken or amiss in terms of paintwork and stuff like that. A quick glance, he's looking pretty cool and very tall. So let's quickly clear all this packaging away so we can take a closer look at the figure. So now I have the KX security droid figure out of the packaging, as well as the two accessories which were bundled up in that paper envelope. I have them all unwrapped now. So let's get stuck in and take a look at this figure. Now, of course, he is a 6-inch scale, but he is much taller than the average Black Series 6-inch figure because he's supposed to stand taller than a normal human. And I do have a Cal Kestis Black Series 6-inch figure from Jedi Survivor on hand to do a little bit of comparison in a little bit. But first, let's take a proper look at this figure. Now, this is him standing as he came in the box, just a little bit of a tweak to the arm. He does have a slightly wider leg stance because that's how he came in the box, but I was really surprised to see how easily he stood straight from the box. I didn't need to tweak his legs at all, so that was really quite nice. Sometimes they can be a little bit oddly proportioned when they're sort of in the packaging. The legs tend to be a little bit squished together and they need a bit of tweaking there to get them to stand up, but he looks great. So I'm really happy about that because, of course, they are a bit top heavy. They've got a very big torso compared to the legs, especially those ankles. And one of the first things you can see when I tip him to the side is we have that really cool sort of hollow illusion effect going on at the joins. So you can see it kind of looks like we can see all the way through at the knees, the ankles. We've also got it at the elbows, not at the wrists. Those are solid, but instead of there being hollow, it's actually a little bit of clear plastic. We have sort of like a clear plastic sort of disc or peg running through those spots. So it does give it some stability, but it does kind of look like it's hollow, which is quite fun. Though, of course, at the wrist, they are a little bit smaller, so we do kind of have that circular shape, but it is just painted straight silver there. We don't have that sort of little clear disc running through those wrist articulation points, but we do have it at the elbow there, which is really quite nice. I like that effect. Still got the stability with a bit of accuracy there and some really nice movement there. I'm going to have so much fun with some poses with this guy. So, of course, let's check him out in terms of his details. It's always really fun. Obviously, I open up a lot of humanoid and human figures in both the vintage collection and 6-inch Black Series scale. So it's really fun when I get something with completely different designs. Obviously, KXs are so unique, very different to other Star Wars droids. I absolutely love them. Of course, K2SO is so funny. I love his humor, but then when they are just sort of standard Imperial KX droids, they are so scary and imposing. So I think this is really fun. Of course, this is not a sort of a named character per se. It's a KX Imperial droid. So you could army build these if you really wanted to, which I think is kind of fun there as well. He's just so tall. Now, of course, he is an Imperial droid. He's mostly black, so I'm going to do my best to show off the sculpting detail because there is some really nice detail and there are some fine painted details here as well. So I'm just going to take a look. I'm kind of going to bend his legs so here so I can get his head a little bit closer in here. So, of course, we've got some really nice sculpting detail here on his face. If I sort of tip him to the side, we've got a really narrow neck here, a little sort of narrow neck stalk there. His head is articulated. We'll check out the articulation very shortly. But we've sort of got, I think it's white. I think they look like white painted eyes. They're quite sort of like, it's almost like a skull design, isn't it? It's quite sort of ghostly with those white eyes painted in there. And he has a lot of silver really fine detail around sort of the vocabulator sort of section there around his mouth and jawline. Some really nice fine sculpting detail accentuated with a metallic silver paint, which I really like there. You can kind of see up under the neck there, but it's not really as detailed. Of course, you're not really going to be looking straight up under the neck, and it's pretty dark. I can just sort of see the black plastic in there, but of course the head looks really cool. Got a little bit of sculpting detail that runs around the back, but it's not too anything fancy there, just the sort of midline there. Again, a lot of sort of skull sort of symbolism here, quite creepy. Now moving on, we do have a bit of sculpting detail around at the neckline. It's black on black and a little bit shadowed. It's a bit hard to show, but we do have some sort of rings kind of going around there at the neckline. They are really hard to get the light in there, but it looks quite nice there. And I can just kind of see the articulation on that neck stalk just kind of tucking in there. It looks like almost like, I think it's just the light catching on black there. It's just kind of every now and again showing up as a lighter color, but I believe that is black in there. So moving his arms, I do like the articulation. I can't wait to test out all the angles. We've got, of course, this really unique, almost kind of like some of the old Imperial armorers from Empire Strikes Back, sort of like snow troopers and Dengar and the like, with the sort of front chest piece here. The sculpted detail, we have got a very small amount of gray paint outlining the sort of R shape here on the chest. We've also got two tiny little buttons to the side, one white and one blue, really nicely sort of matched to the sculpting there. Nice alignment. Now for the shoulder attachment pieces here, we've got gray paint with a rim there of red. Now if I look straight on, we do have a subtly different sort of placement in terms of the red, sort of a very small line here for the red line around on the shoulders. This one goes a little bit further than that sculpting, like you just kind of see it there on the top, just going over that sculpting line just a little bit. Of course I couldn't see that because it was in a plastic free packaging box with no window, but it's not so bad as it would bother me or make me wish that I had perhaps chosen another box off the shelf. On the whole, pretty tidy paintwork here for that grey and that red accent piece there. Now of course we've got slightly asymmetrical shoulder pieces here. We have mostly red here on his right arm with that stripe of black there. Moving on to his left shoulder, it's all black with a fantastic Imperial cog symbol here in a metallic silver. Not the sharpest detail I have seen in digital printing, but it looks very clean. It's not weathered or smudged, and it just looks nice. I like the metallic printing used here. So for the rest of his body, it is pretty much all black with some small silver accent pieces. If I sort of play with his articulation a little bit, we've got some sort of accent pieces here, sort of metallic rods, if you will, as part of his sort of abdomen sculpting here that is accented in silver, which kind of gives them a nice metal finish there. And again, we also have a little bit of that sort of detail going on here in the back. You can see some of the sculpting detail here in the back. Of course, we've got the back piece, kind of reminds me of the back plate on Stormtrooper armor. Of course, we've sort of got the circle and these stripes there. We've got those peg attachment pieces for his sort of power pack, his jetpack sort of a piece there, sorry, backpack sort of, it's like a big battery pack to put on his back soon there. And we can see some of that sculpting detail on the back there, on the abdomen. Pretty flat sort of surface area here with a tiny sculpting detail just there that you can just catch in the light. But we do have some silver details extending down on the arms and the legs. So it kind of looks like sort of attachment plates here. We've got a silver detail line running around the top of his thighs there on both sides. These are tidier, I think, compared to the red lines, which I think is really important. Silver is almost white, especially when compared to a black. It certainly has such a high contrast with black. So I really want the silver paint lines to be nice and straight, and they do look nice and fine on these particular parts, especially on the front. I can kind of forgive Hasbro if things get a little bit wobbly in the back. Not my favorite, but I know that that's going to be fairly well hidden on a display. We might get just a little bit wobbly in that silver paint just on the inside here, but that's pretty tucked away in, and I can sort of deal with that. Now, of course, we do have a sort of a mix of sort of metallic silver plastic and metallic silver paint at the joins. So some of these pieces look like they are that sort of metallic-y silver plastic, and then other parts more towards the lower parts look like the paint. We get just a subtle difference in that metallic finish and the shine there. So it's pretty overall, it looks pretty cohesive, but when you look at it really up close, you can see those differences there. And again, down here at the ankles, I think we've got more of a metallic paint rather than silver going on here at the ankles, which is nice. Again, we have silver paint here on the wrists. Now, these ones aren't quite as tidy because, of course, we're trying to sort of paint over joins. Sometimes that ends up being a little bit messy because of the fine joints here. Not quite as clean in terms of the attachment points compared to the elbows here. There's something that just looks really nice and sort of machined part almost with these circular attachment points. And because we're dealing with such a small attachment point here on the wrists, they start looking like a plastic toy rather than those really nice circular attachment points. But I'm hoping that when we get all of his accessories on and a weapon in hand, it's going to start to sort of obscure some of those smaller niggles. So overall, the rest of his details, of course, we've gone over most of the silver paint work and stuff. We've got a lot of line work on his actual sort of body parts here. We can see some of that in the light here. We've got some of this fluff on my hand, sorry. We've got this really nice sculpting lines here on his arm. We've got some on his hip here. It is black on black. It's a little hard to show, but it does look really nice. Just kind of breaks up some of that all over black. Sculpting lines on the thighs, not too much on the calves. It's a little bit more towards the inner leg there. A little bit on the back there as well. Of course, we've got some details here on the feet sections as well. So some really nice detail there, and I'm just quite impressed. He does feel quite sturdy. I can sort of hold him by the legs, and he doesn't feel like he's sort of flexing at the joints. Sometimes if I hold him just on the lower leg, that isn't actually enough weight on his upper torso to really fling. I thought maybe he'd already start to sink if I'm holding him by his leg. So I quite like that, particularly when we've got so much plastic on the upper body. I want to make sure that the joints can actually support that much weight. So that was actually really nice to see that he's not completely collapsing at his knees there, because he's going to have a lot of weight, especially when we get that power pack sort of backpack accessory into place there on the back. So he's a lot of fun. Now let's quickly test out the articulation. He did have a slightly wider leg stance when he came in the box compared to how he was pictured on the box. So I'm hoping that perhaps we might get just a little bit of a tighter stance in with his legs. So let's test out the articulation. So of course, it's not going to be the same as a human. Droids tend to have slightly different sort of range of movement. So just going to check out his head. Of course, we can rotate that one around. His sort of neck stalk does move up and down, of course, because they're kind of going to look down at shorter humans, or perhaps they're going to keep that sort of upper appearance there so we can really see those eyes. He is so tall. But I don't think we're going to get the same sort of range of motion with these shoulders. I don't think we're going to go out to the side. These look quite high. I'm just going to test that though, because I'm kind of curious. Wow, okay. I thought because of how close that looks, I wasn't sure that we'd actually be able to go up to the side. And I can get to about there. That's actually fairly impressive. And you can see I am not quite touching the Imperial symbol there, so I don't need to worry too much about potentially scratching that by raising that. I think that is kind of where that's going to stop. And you can kind of see the attachment style there underneath the arm. So if we can move that, we've got some really nice, of course, I can sort of rotate him all the way around, but I'm actually surprised with how far out to the side I can get that arm. And let's just test the other side. Sometimes they have subtle differences. I'm just trying to make sure that I'm pulling it on the right plane of alignment. There we go. Got the same attachment style there. Quite impressive with how far out to the side, considering those are really big shoulder pieces which are permanently attached to the arm. They are not a separate piece, and they are sort of fitting directly underneath that shoulder attachment. So that's quite impressed with that. I wasn't actually expecting those arms to do anything but rotate sort of around in a circle. So let's test out those elbows. Nice and easy to the side, and of course up and down, all the kind of range of motion that I would expect. And of course the hands are going to do very similar things. We can spin them around nice and freely, and of course we're also going to be able to fold front and back. I don't think we've got side-to-side articulation on these particular droids. Some humans have the sort of side-to-side slight rocking ability in their arms, but we've got some really nice elbows. We don't have a blaster weapon with this particular KX droid. We have a staff weapon, so I'm really hoping that we can get some good poses with these arms. And of course we can see the hands. We don't really have a trigger finger on this one. The hands are pretty much the same, just a slightly sort of sculpted one with it just kind of extended, but not a separate trigger finger because we don't have a blaster there. And the fingers don't actually close. They kind of look like they do, but they're sculpted flat. You can kind of see the detail there. It's very hard sometimes to show black on black detail. They kind of look like they would close, but they are sculpted in that position. So hopefully that is going to be wide enough to have a good grasp on the staff weapon that we have here, the sort of the electro staff. Now, something I'm really curious to see is the articulation around the sort of torso and hips, because it's all kind of condensed in a very small area. Now, of course, we don't have sort of a belt or anything like that to have the standard articulation. We've got the big chest piece and then the abdomen section here. Now, because this hip V section here comes up quite high to the sides, I don't know that we're necessarily going to get much side to side, but we get a little bit of a rocking motion there, kind of clicks into place fine. Now, oh, okay, that is very stiff, but I can get him to turn. There was a little bit of a tightness there. Once I turned him once, I got a little bit freer there. I thought it might be one of those ones where it really fights me and sort of clicks into place, but he is rotating nicely there. A little bit more towards the back. I can kind of lean him towards the back, and then he kind of comes up to center. Doesn't really want to lean forward more than that, which is kind of what I'd expect. You can lean back and you can kind of expose some more of that abdomen sculpting line there. You can see all the way back. There's a lot of detail hidden under there. Otherwise, we can sort of bring him back into a more neutral level position there. Really fun. So if I show, I can't really bend him forward much. I'm not exposing much there, but we can sort of move him back and hide a bit more of that sort of a back detail there. But he's gonna probably need to be a little bit more neutral in his position because of the weight of his accessory pack that we're going to put on his back there. But that's actually a reasonable amount of articulation at that midpoint there. So the tricky part, let's check out these legs. So I'm going to be really careful because this droid is going to absolutely rely on these hip joints. So I'm just going to move his arms up out of the way. So he can actually move his legs out more than I thought. Because we've got these sort of unusual shaped hips where we've kind of got these big flat edges, I thought we might not actually be able to open his legs up very wide, but we can actually get a really wide stance there. So I'm hoping that means that we can actually get a bit more of a narrower stance. They kind of want to go back out, not completely straight sort of parallel. They kind of want to have a slightly wider stance, perhaps if I move them around a little bit. So we can actually get some really high kicks. This is absolutely fascinating with how high I can sort of kick. If I'm going to kick them both out, he's kind of sitting in a bit of a wide-legged stance there. A little bit odd for a cockpit sort of position there. I can get him to about that kind of position, but yeah, some really cool maneuverability there with the hips. I was really not quite sure how well he was going to move there because of this very unusual different shapes there at the hips. Now, of course, we've seen these knees on a smaller scale figures, really nice. I like that movement there. And of course, that kind of illusion there with the clear plastic through the joints is really fun. And of course, we can do some movements that humans can't. We can bend the legs completely forward because, of course, we've just got those very circular joints. So a really nice range of movement there all the way to the back. And it's kind of interesting where the ankle joints are. They're not sort of all the way down. Now, we do have this sort of extra part there I'm just going to put that back into sort of a rotation. We've got this side to side sort of attachment point here. Again, black on black, where we can rotate the foot to the side, which is really, that's actually like a lot of range of movement, and I can probably go here almost all the way to the side. So there's quite a lot of rock there in that ankle, as well as actually, of course, with those sort of circular attachment points there. So a ton of movement there in the ankles. Absolutely fantastic. So lots of posing ability here. Now on my one, he's still not standing completely sort of parallel, but I think that that is potentially going to give him a little bit more stability. He does actually stand up better than I was expecting, even though I've gone and played with all of his articulation points. That didn't take much tweaking to actually get him back into a very stable position, and I really love just how maneuverable those ankles are, because everything is resting on those very small joints. So I'm really happy about that. So I'm just going to pop him there in the back, and let's take a quick look at his accessories. So we've got a really interesting accessory pack here. It's kind of like a power pack of sorts, a sort of a backpack style here in a black plastic with some red detail painting around sort of these big sort of energy cylinders of sorts. We've got a silver sort of control panel here with some button details painted there. And then of course we've got these double red wires coming out of the top. You can see the connection points there where we're going to attach it to his back. We've got that rectangle and also a circle. Interesting that we have two attachment points, a little bit unusual. Most of my black series just have a singular shaped peg there. So we've got 2 points there. And then we've got these sort of double red wires that have a little bit of flex to them, but I am going to be careful because we've got these sort of loops which do have a split in them intentionally. So this one here, we can see that we have the split more towards there, and this one we have the split about here, because once we put this on his arm, these are going to clip down his right arm, of course. So that's going to be really fun. And then, of course, in his right arm, I'm going to put his electro staff weapon. So mine has the tiniest of curve to it. Of course, I couldn't see this in the box, but there is a little bit of a curve to it. Unfortunately, I'm hoping that once I get it into his hands, I can kind of pose it at an angle where I can't see that curve. We've got some sort of grip texture there, little knobs and buttons and things like that on here. It's all one color, kind of a mid-gray. We've got sort of an emitter end with some translucent blue sort of electro effect here. And I really like this on Star Wars accessory toys. And if I pull gently, it does actually extend here a little bit. So this isn't attached. It does kind of drop down. So I'm hoping to kind of pose him perhaps a little bit like this. So that doesn't kind of go all the way down. If it really bothers you, then you can sort of slide it down and it's going to sit a little bit more in place. But I'm hoping this is going to be fun. It is a bit of a thicker accessory weapon, a little bit thicker than a lightsaber hilt. So I'm hoping that my KX Droid is going to hold on to this really well. So let's get these accessories into place. I'm hoping that these little rings aren't going to be too hard to put down his arm. We might need to sort of change the position of his arms. So you can see we've got those two attachment peg sections there on the back. Just going to line those up, and hopefully 2 attachment points means that that's going to be really well attached. So I don't see light between those. In fact, to my eyes in person, that almost looks like it is glued in place, which is what I like to see, especially since it's on such a sort of a high angle on his back. I don't want that coming off. And it's, yeah, just that looks really nice and secure. So let's hopefully get these onto his arms there. So judging by the artwork on the box, I'm going to try and sort of match these up as best as I can. I'm going to put that one just above his elbow there because that looks about right. And then this one is going to hopefully fit just above his wrist there. This one is actually a little bit of a tighter ring. The other one kind of flexes open. That one was a little bit tighter there. So hopefully that looks cool. It does mesh in. Oh, that one's come off. Okay. Hopefully they will kind of mesh in with the sort of the ring design. He's got all these sort of stripes on his arms, so it does kind of fit in with the design there. So hopefully it's kind of going to really sit in place. And I'm just going to see if they will stay relatively in place. That one will come up a little bit up further up his forearm there, but I can still pose him reasonably well without worrying about them sort of popping off too much. They are sort of split open. That one does have a bit of a gap when it's in place. definitely have to sort of play around with the sort of the perfect placement on these ones to kind of make them look like they are sort of a complete ring. I can sort of see the gaps, a little bit hard to show because they're such dark colors. But now I've got that sort of power pack on for, let's check out this weapon. So hoping that this will go into his hand, not too tricky. It is a lighter gray, especially when you get it next to his black. I thought it was maybe like a really dark gray. Now that went in really nicely. That's actually a really solid grip. I could kind of feel the textures of this grip section kind of pulling against his hand. So it's definitely holding in there with a lot of tension. So I'm definitely going to spend a bit of time doing some poses, but first things first, I want to see how well this guy is going to stand up now that I have his accessories on. Okay, so he is balancing pretty well. That is a pretty heavy sort of a power pack there, sort of battery pack there for his staff weapon on his back, and there's a little part where it feels like he might tip over a little bit more towards the front, but just very quickly, he's posing here really nicely. He's looking really imposing. This is quite fun. And of course, I can extend that little end tip there a little bit. That's all the way out, and I can kind of get the electro effect to sit there. If I play around with that, it's probably going to slide back down the staff, but he looks really cool. Okay, so definitely going to take a little bit of time just to find that right perfect spot where he feels completely at balance, because he does have a lot of accessories on those very small ankles, but he looks really cool. Sometimes it's hard to show just how cool these figures are when they're black on black. There's a lot of detail that's just a little bit hard to see on camera, but he looks really cool. So I mentioned earlier that I do actually have a Cal Kestis figure from Jedi Survivor on hand, just to kind of give a sense of scale. So let's go and grab him in, and hopefully that KX Droid is going to stand up straight for me. So here we have the gaming grades 6-inch Black Series scale Cal Kestis, and of course I have to have BD1 there as well, who looks absolutely so cute and tiny next to the very large KX Droid there. So that's really fun. You can see, of course, this one is supposed to be sort of, you know, the standard 6-inch figure. This guy is so much taller. In fact, if I grab a quick ruler, you can see Cal Kestis is just on 6 inches, just above the height there, and this one is, well, he's well past my ruler. So you can see again, he's a little over 15 centimeters, and this guy is even taller than my ruler. So really fun. He is so much taller. In New Zealand, the gaming greats line do tend to have a slightly higher price point, which is a little bit frustrating, but this is one of those figures where I can kind of give them a little bit of a pass because it is bigger, and we do have a large sort of accessory pack there. It's kind of akin to some of those Mandalorian jet packs, and I kind of can understand a little bit because the figure is so much taller than a humanoid figure. Of course, I did bide my time, and I was able to get this one on clearance. I think just not being able to see the figures in those plastic-free packaging boxes did a little bit of a detriment, especially when you're paying that higher price ticket for a figure you can't even see. And of course, for people that like to keep their figures in their boxes, there was no point buying two, one to open, one to keep boxed, because you couldn't see in the box. So I'm glad I waited and got this one on clearance, because I think he's really cool and I do want to add him to my collection. But of course, that little bit of the unknown about those plastic-free packaging. But I'm really excited to have him in my collection. I kind of wish I could army build him a little bit, you know, put a few around Cal Kestis here, because he just looks so cool. I love the design of KX Droids. And of course, as an aside, I'm really looking forward to seeing K2SO return in season 2 of Andor. Looking forward to lots of figures and merchandise of him as well, because I think it's a really fun design. Even though it's actually relatively new in the Star Wars galaxy, they just feel like they've been a part of Star Wars for a long time. And I think that they're really cool. Fun to see some variations coming up in the Gaming Greats line. I think this one was so fun. I'm just really enjoying some of the really fun and playful variants of classic Star Wars sort of bad guys, troopers, battle droids, KX droids coming through in the video games. It's just really fun. For a Star Wars video game fan like myself, I'm just having so much fun with this line, and I'm slowly building up my Jedi Survivor collection with my Black Series figures. This looks really cool. He is really cool. I was a little bit worried about how well he would stand up, especially with all of those accessories. I'm going to spend a time actually sort of posing him, getting those legs to just be a little bit straighter, but I'm really impressed impressed with how well he's standing up just with my very quick test play here of getting him into a pose next to Cal Kestis. So I'm having so much fun. I think he's a really cool figure and I'm really happy to have him in my collection. So thank you so much for hanging out with me today as I opened up another Star Wars Gaming Greats Black Series 6-inch figure and checked out all of the details and did a quick comparison next to Cal Kestis here as well. I hope you have a wonderful morning, afternoon or evening wherever you are in the galaxy, and let's hang out again very soon for more Star Wars fun. May the Force be with you. If you're a Black Series fan, I've also unboxed the Riot Scout Trooper figure from Jedi Survivor. That video is linked here in case you haven't already seen it, as well as a whole Black Series unboxing playlist. This is the way.